Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down, a special edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down. You could say a premiere edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down. That's right. If you saw my announcement last night, you know that we are creating and starting a new little playlist that'll kind of incorporate the retro review, but move it to Thursdays, every Thursday. So today, Thursday, February 28th, I welcome you to the first ever Theater Throwback. Oh man, I am pumped, man, to hop into the time machine and travel back to talk about movies that are no longer in the theater. Some of my favorites, some I haven't seen, some that are just outright classics. And we start with a little film that started a trilogy that I went and watched conclude on Sunday. Oh man, I love this series so much from DreamWorks. And if you've been following along, you got to know what I'm talking about. So pull up a chair, take a seat. We're getting ready to dive in spoiler free on How to Train Your Dragon. That's right, the original, man. And it's such a great series, a series I love so deeply. Typically, when you hit like that, you start real strong. And How to Train Your Dragon certainly did that. As someone who could consider himself an outsider sometimes, Hiccup is just a character that is so relatable in so many ways, especially for the age that he's in and what he's going through. As he is a Viking, for those that are unfamiliar with How to Train Your Dragon, and the Vikings on the island that they live are constantly being raided by dragons who are just taking, food off the island. And, the Vikings always try to kill the dragons, and then the dragons fight back. And at the beginning, we learn about all of the different dragons. And there's so many different ones. And, you got two-headed ones and ones that'll light themselves on fire. And they're just all spectacular to look at. And you kind of open with this huge kind of sequence of all these dragons coming in, you right into it. And then, of course, there is, one called the Night Fury, which no one has ever seen and is the most deadly of all the dragons. And the concept of the movie is, Hiccup is not a dragon fighter. He works with his dad's friend Gobber, who's played by Craig Ferguson, who's just absolutely hysterical. Kind of fixing up weapons and stuff. And one night, during this raid, you see, Jay Baruchel's character Hiccup take down what appears to be a Night Fury, but nobody believes him because he does not thrive well in these situations. And after some convincing by Gobber to his father Stoic, who's voiced by Gerard Butler, they kind of throw Hiccup into dragon training with a group of other kids that are all about his age. Astrid, who's voiced by America Ferrara, Snotlout, who's voiced by Jonah Hill, quite funnily, Fishlegs, who's played by Christopher Mintz-Plasse, Tough Nut and Rough Nut, who are played by T.J. Miller and Kristen Wiig, respectively. And everybody else is much better at the dragon fighting. And Hiccup is not very good. And since no one believes him, he eventually goes and tracks down see if he actually did hit something. And sure enough, finds our main dragon, Toothless, who is a Night Fury. And watching the relationship between, Hiccup and Toothless, he kind of injured Toothless. So the only way for Toothless to fly is if he makes something to help kind of fix his back wing. And you get to watch this relationship where Hiccup starts to realize that dragons aren't there to kill the Vikings. If you approach it without a weapon, it'll actually kind of respond very, very much like a dog. And he calls him Toothless because his teeth aren't there unless he takes them out. And he's just wonderfully animated, and I love the relationship between the two of them. And as Hiccup kind of learns things about Toothless, and as he starts to train him, he learns that there are things he can do to actually manipulate the dragons inside the ring. So while his dad is out trying to find the island of where all the dragons are so they can wipe them all out, he's dominating in the ring and outsmarting all of the other kids. And Jay Baruchel just does an absolute awesome job as Hiccup. The voice fits perfectly for what his character is, and he just does such a good job, as does the entire voice cast. And that's the thing with this series, and specifically with this one, to get right out the gate and just have this chemistry with all the different people, even though they're not all buddy-buddy. the way in which Hiccup functions and interacts with everybody, man, it lends itself to comedy and adventure and action, and those, oh my gosh, just so beautiful to just watch Hiccup flying this dragon and the pure joy that emanates out of his voice. It's just one that you're just like, wow, man, like nails it, and it so fits the character and just elevates that whole story. And the group that he's surrounded is awesome. Astrid, who is just this tough ass, little blonde Viking who, is the romantic interest of Hiccup. And they have an interesting relationship because as she's probably the favorite out of all of them to like win. And the winner gets to kill a dragon in front of the entire island. And, you just get the sense very early on that Astrid is, supposed to be that one. And as Hiccup, continues to do things, she gets so frustrated. And watching that, occur kind of builds this relationship, organically without too much direct interaction. And when she eventually follows him at one point, you start to see their relationship build and how he gets her to trust him that, the dragons aren't an enemy is what eventually will lead to him being able to convince the entire island, as is the big twist with the dragons, and we'll get there in a minute. But the rest of the cast is fantastic, man. Jonah Hill as Snotlout is just laugh out loud funny the entire movie, as is Christopher Mintz-Plasse. And it's nice to see the super bad buddies kind of being able to play off each other here. And Snotlout is kind of one of those, I think I'm better than everybody else. And I think Fish Legs is kind of, like the nerd of the group, and he's a little bit bigger. And Christopher Mintz-Plasse just perfect for that type of voice work. And then Tough Nut and Rough Nut are twins, and they're just absolutely hysterical because they just spew nonsense out of their mouths all the time. And they're really kind of dumb knuckleheads, but in a really, really charming and funny way. And voiced by T.J. Miller and Kristen Wiig. You just get a lot of comedy from that group. And getting to watch them kind of swing to Hiccup's side and how that annoys Astrid, that just all plays so well. And then, as I said, there's a twist toward the end that you find out the dragons are stealing the food for a reason. And that reason is something that Hiccup is able to figure out, but when his dad gets back and finds out he's been lying in controlling the dragons, he's not happy, doesn't want to hear it, and they head out. And the way the conflict kind of resolves itself, it is a big surprise, and it brings some real serious, like, on the edge of your seat type stuff. And I love when an animated movie can do that, can bring you to the edge of your seat and get the suspense up, like, and especially with all new characters, you're like, I don't know what's going to happen to anybody here. And I love how the movie ultimately plays out, and how the relationship between, Hiccup and Toothless is really the driving force into changing, their entire world. And where it leaves itself off just sets it up for a really fun sequel. And I'm just a massive fan of How to Train Your Dragon. Like I said, an amazing voice cast, a really, really solid story. And, from, the romantic angle to the friendship angle to the angle with, Hiccup and his dad Stoic. There's a lot there, and you feel and get all of that. And then you have just great comedy in there, especially with Gobber, who's played by Craig Ferguson. It's just a perfectly well-rounded animated film. And the animation, even back then, just watching it on Sunday, it's still so much fun. And the riding and flying of the dragons, anytime you're on the back of one of them when they're moving around, and as the series progresses, it just gets better and better. So good. And I remember it just being such an inventive movie. So for me, huge fan of How to Train Your Dragon. Absolutely loved it. And it's still, to this day, it still ranks number one. My buddy was like, would you give Hidden World 10 out of 10? I was like, I really, really enjoyed Hidden World, but there was like one tiny thing about it that I was like, ooh. And being that I still just liked the flow, there wasn't an abundance of characters, so you were kind of still able to center around this, this tight-knit group. I like the way that played. This is still my favorite. I give this, if you were going to rank them 10 out of 10, Hidden World would be like a 9.9. And How to Train Your Dragon 2, which we will be talking about very shortly on another Theater Throwback, which will be dropping shortly after this one. I really enjoyed the way this works, and all three of them, they're like 10, 9.9, 9.8, 8.5. They're all real close to each other. They all bring different elements. But the first one, still my favorite, because it just started so strong, and it makes you absolutely loved this series right away, even without knowing that we were going to get 2 more. So there you go, man. Those are all my non-spoiler thoughts on How to Train Your Dragon. A throwback all the way to 2010. Such a great movie. If you have not seen it, you got to check it out. But now I want to know your thoughts. If you have seen it, man, how much did you enjoy How to Train Your Dragon when it came out, or the first time you saw it? Did it suck you right into this world of Vikings and dragons and just wanting to see more? And where does it rank for you among all 3, if you've seen all 3, or just between the first 2? Let me know all that down below. If you haven't seen it, I hope I've enticed you the way I hopefully enticed you to see the 3rd one, because it's a really great franchise, and the first movie really starts off really strong. Like I said, watching the building of the relationship between Hiccup and Toothless, it's just so wonderful, and such a genuine friendship between the 2 of them, and it allows Hiccup to become a hero along with Toothless. And that's a theme that starts in the first one that plays itself out really, really nicely all the way to the 3rd. So leave all those thoughts and comments down below. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new here and you want to come join the Cinema Sit-Down Squad, hit that subscribe button and then the little bell so you get alerts every time I make a new video. For the Seaman's Cinema Sit-Down, first theater throwback in the books, I'm the Seaman. I'm signing off. Peace! Well, that's all live and breathe. You still here? Check out a video like this one or this one, and hit the subscribe button so you can get alerts and check out everything the Seaman's got at the Cinema Sit-Down.